All right, so we're going to get started today with cutting sections in SketchUp. We're going to do sections today. We'll do perspectives on Wednesday, and then everything's due on Monday. So it kind of all wraps up real quick. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving break, and such is the way the semester goes that we don't have a lot of time left. So that's either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. So today we're going to work on cutting a section through our. And I think one of the important things to talk about when we start thinking about cutting a section is sections are very, very important when it comes to understanding the space and how we feel in the space and what it's going to be like to be in the space. They're actually more valuable than a plan is. And if we think about, say, this room, if I drew a plan of this room, it would be a big rectangle. But I wouldn't have a lot of sense of how big the space is or what it would feel like until I drew the section, because the section is essentially how we experience that space. The other thing that happens, though, frequently in early architecture studios is the instructor or the professor will give you hey, you need to have 2 sections or you need to have 3 sections, and you guys will just slap a couple sections on because you know you need to have a few sections. You really need to think about where these sections belong and what they're showing you about the building as well, because I could cut many sections through this that would be virtually useless. And I need to make sure that I'm thinking about where's the right section to cut. And so when it comes to cutting a section, we can cut a section in either direction. We're going to use the section tool, which is available in the large tool set. It's not shown by default in this version of SketchUp. So I'm going to go up to my view menu and then check toolbars, and then check the box for large tool set. And when I do that, I'll see the section tool right here. We use this tool in the plan view. When we're creating the section in its non-plan form, essentially we can pick any face of the building and then start cutting our section. So for example, I could pick this face of the building, then I can take my section, and then I can use the move tool and dynamically slide it through the building, like that. And so as I'm looking at this building and kind of sliding through it, there are several sections that may or may not be interesting. Let me spin the view just a little bit so we're looking at it as it goes through. Obviously, all of this is in the perspective view. We'll get it into a flat section view in a little bit. But as I start to think about what do I want to show, something like this shows a lot about what the space would be like in this room. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of detail in that room, so it's not very exciting. As I move forward a little bit here, okay, well, this is somewhat interesting, because I'm seeing that there's building and then I'm seeing the elevation view of this building. I can keep moving, and then pretty soon we're going to see, okay, that's kind of interior and exterior. I'm seeing a little bit of that hallway and also the rear bedroom. And then if I keep coming in here, there's both of my bedrooms, and then ultimately I could be in the closet. The closet less valuable than, say, both bedrooms like that. So I want to think about where is it that I want to cut this section. And so kind of the nice thing about SketchUp is you can kind of dynamically push and pull the section plane through the building and decide where is the best place to cut the section. So if I were picking in this view right now, the sections I would probably do would be one of this room and maybe one of this, so that you can see. And then if I had to pick one of the bedrooms, I'd pick right about there of the bedrooms. Those would be the ideal places in this orientation. Now alternatively, let me go ahead and delete this section plane. I could also cut a section at the back of the building here, and then I could move this section the same way through the building. And something like this is kind of an interesting way of looking at the buildings. So right here I'm getting the living room space, I'm getting the hallway between, I'm getting the windows in that hallway, I'm getting the door to outside, and ultimately I'm getting the bedroom. Now, it's unfortunate because I can't quite get into the front bedroom. Like, that would be ideal because I get the front bedroom, but I lose the hallway there. So I kind of have to decide where's the right place. I think that's probably the best in this particular orientation to give me the most information about the building. And really that's what a section is about. So you kind of want to play around with this and decide what's the best piece of information. Now if I was cutting the section going the opposite direction, looking this way, in my particular model, it wouldn't look very interesting because I have nothing on the back wall. I never modeled that back wall. So you want to think about what you've modeled, what looks the best, and then pick a section accordingly. Remember, you ultimately have control over what you're showing me in your building. I'm not looking at your model. I'm just looking at the final section. And that's something to keep in mind whenever you're in studio, is you have control over what you show. And so if you show the finished product, you're going to get better reviews than if you show the unfinished product. So think about that. Okay, so we need to set this up as an actual section view. Remember, I don't want it to be in perspective. So right now, we can see that we have all of our lines are going toward a vanishing point right here. It's a 1-point perspective. We want to change that. And so I'm going to go to my camera menu. I'm going to go to standard views. And I forget whether it's the front or the back. I think it's the back. Nope, it's the front. So I'll go to camera, standard views. Let me go to front. There we go. And I'm going to go to camera and then switch to parallel projection. And so I shouldn't see any of those vanishing lines, which I don't now. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit to try to get a good version of my building. There we go. And I'm then going to go into my styles tray over here. I'm going to go to the default styles and I'm going to pick the hidden line mode right there. SketchUp does have the ability of filling in what it thinks are the section cuts. They call it section fill. It did a reasonably good job at filling it in for me. It's missing a little bit here in the floor, but it's not too bad. So when I go to view here, I'm going to turn off the section cuts because it put, oh, excuse me. We're going to leave the section cuts on. I'm going to make sure section planes is off, which it currently is. Let me turn off axes and guides. And now we're looking at this. I have the ability here under view to turn off the section fill or turn on the section fill. Sometimes it will fill in whole parts of your model as opposed to actually just doing the walls. So you might have to turn it off. You might be able to leave it on. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a scene before we move forward. So I'm going to go over to the scenes tray here. There it is. I'll click the plus sign to add this as a scene. It's called scene 6, but I really should probably rename it. So I'll right click on it, say rename scene, and then we'll call this section. I'll call it section 1. That just lets me come back to this particular scene later on. Okay, so I have my first lines drawing. I'm going to go ahead and leave it with the section fill on. I'll go to File and then Export 2D Graphic. This works the same way we've done it before. It's a JPEG image. This is going to be my lines. And I'm going to go ahead and say fill also. I'll go to my options. I'm going to uncheck the use view size. And I'll make my width 5,000. And I'll go ahead and say OK. Put it on my flash drive. It's going to be section. All right, and I'll go ahead and click on Export. Just in case, I'm going to do another one where I don't have the section fill on. I'm going to go back to the version without the section fill. I'll go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. And this one is just going to be the plain lines. And I'll go ahead and click on Export. The next one was to turn on the X-ray view. So I'll go here into the Styles tray. I'll go into the Edit tab. The last option, let's see, it's under Face Settings. And then I'll click on X-ray. And it really shows me almost nothing except for these stairs, which are going to be hidden anyway. So it's really not worth doing the X-ray view. But in some cases, you might get something that would otherwise be valuable. So it's worth checking it before you move on. So I have the X-ray view, that's fine. Let's see what else. We're going to go, the next one we've been doing is shadows. If I were to turn on view and then shadows, we'd see the shadows. Now the hard part about the way that SketchUp does shadows is when you put a section plane in, you're going to see the shadows as if that half of the building didn't exist. So there's going to be weird shadows inside as if this were the building were cut. So it's not really that useful, certainly in this view. I can also go and double check without the section cuts as to whether there'd be any shadow that would be worthwhile. Nope, not really. There's not really a good shadow here, so I'm going to skip the shadow export. But again, I double check it before I just say no. Let's go ahead and turn back on the section cut. There we go. Okay, let's see. Next, I'll go back into my select. I'm going to do my sketchy edges styles. First one was the airbrush with endpoints. I'm going to go into view. I'm going to turn off section planes. I'm going to go to view. I'm going to turn off section fill. I'm going to go to view, turn off the guides. There it is. I'll go ahead and go to file and then export 2D graphic. And this one was the airbrush. And again, you can pick any one that you want. Then we'll export that. And the last one was the pen gray. I'll just do the pen black, that's fine. Let me turn off the section planes, turn off the guides, and I'm going to turn off the fill. Here we go. And we'll go to File, Export 2D Graphic. And this is now the pen. And I'll click on Export. It may be helpful to have a color version, so I can go back to the default styles. I can pick one of the color versions because that might help you to select pieces of the building. I'm going to go to View. I'm going to turn off my section Fill. And I'm going to turn off my axes, and I'm going to turn off my guides. That leaves me with these colors. I'll go to File and then Export 2D Graphic. And we can call this one Color. And again, it's not one that I'm going to use other than for selection purposes. And there we go. So I've done my exports. It's now time to move over into Photoshop. So I'll go ahead and click on Photoshop here, and I'm going to open up that first drawing. I'll go to File and then Open. There we go. And I'm going to start with the just plain lines. Perfect. There it is. I will then open up by going to File, Place Embedded. We'll do the lines fill. I'll confirm. I'll go to File and then Place Embedded. And we'll bring in the airbrush. Confirm. File, Place Embedded. The pen. And then File, Place Embedded. The last one being the color version. There we go. So I have them all in here. They are all smart objects. The background is currently locked. I'm going to go ahead and unlock the background. I'll right-click on the background layer and say Layer from Background. And we'll go ahead and call this one Lines. And I think it's always a good idea to go through and rename the layers as we go through. So this next one here, I'm just going to call Fill. Next one here is going to be Airbrush. Next one here is going to be the pen. Next one here is going to be the color. Perfect. I'm going to take all of the layers except the base lines layer. Hold down Shift, I'll select all of them. And I'm going to go to the blending modes and switch, instead of normal, they're all going to go to multiply blending mode. And that's going to allow me to see through all of them and see my actual section there. So let me turn off the pen and the airbrush. We don't need those for right now. I am going to leave both the fill and the lines turned on. And so the first thing at this point is we need to start thinking about what that ground is going to look like. It's almost the same as the elevation view. Same strategy here. So we're going to fill in that ground. So I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer. We can call this layer ground. And I'm going to fill the lower part of this building, or the lower part of this view, right like that, with black. So I'll use my brush tool. My foreground color is currently set to black. I need to increase my size a little bit to make this a little bit easier. There we go. And I will then, on the ground layer, paste in, or excuse me, fill in all of this with black. Right, like that. I'll go ahead and use the rectangular marquee tool, click once to deselect, and I now have the base of that ground. It's not exactly, it doesn't exactly look perfectly like ground. Ground would undulate a little bit. So I'll use my regular lasso tool right here, and I will make a selection that goes up and down just a little bit like that. There we go. And then I will use my paintbrush tool again to fill in the ground and make it undulate just a little bit. Same thing on the other side of the building, right here. I'll use my lasso tool. That was really bad. Try that again. There we go. I'll use my brush tool, and we'll fill that piece in. And now that has a little bit of an undulation to it. So by default, you should at least do that part of it with the undulations. I think the other thing that can help is to use the clone stamp with the grass brush to put a grass texture on here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and work with that grass texture. I have the clone stamp selected. I need to select the grass brush, which is available, unfortunately, only in the legacy brushes. So I'll click the little gear icon. I'm going to go to legacy brushes. That will load up the legacy brushes. I'll expand the legacy brushes. I'll scroll down here a bit. It's under default brushes, about halfway down, and it should be right there under grass. Again, clone stamp works by holding down Alt to copy from. So I'll copy from there, and I'll come up here and make sure I'm on the ground layer here. Copy from, and why is it not doing it for me? Huh. Gotta love it when things don't work the way they're supposed to, right? I think my preview size was wrong. Nope, it still doesn't like me. It's having issues. Shows you that stuff can even happen to me. I'll have to sort out what's going on with this. Let me go back to a general brush. I just want to see if the clone stamp will work. No, it does not like me. It shouldn't be, because this is on a normal blending mode and it's on top of everything else. So, see, the problem with a regular brush is if I use the grass, it will fluctuate the colors between the foreground and the background color. I might be able to, let me try, go back to my grass brush here. If I set my foreground and background colors to both be black, it might do it. We'll give it a shot here. No, it does not like me today. All right, so we're going to skip the grass brush for now, and I will attempt to figure out what's going on with it. Let's come back. Let me turn on my other layers here. Let me turn on my ground layer. There we go. This little white section here should have been filled in. So I'm going to go back to my rectangular marquee. I will select it, and then I'm going to fill that in as well. So let me go to the paintbrush tool. I'm not going to use my grass brush. I'm going to use a regular brush here. And I will go ahead and paint that in as well. That should have been included with the fill, but for whatever reason, SketchUp decided not to include it. I'll press Ctrl-0, and we can zoom out, and we can now see that I have this with a nice, strong section. I think it's really important when you're showing a section that you're seeing nice, bold section cuts. So it's clear what's being cut through, it's clear where the ground is, etc. So at this point, it's going to be about putting a background image behind what we're looking at. So I need to go find a background image. So if I did a Creative Commons search or a Google image search, so I could go to Google Images. I could say, let's say Yosemite Meadow. And like I said, I think the meadow look is always a good strategy. Under Tools here, though, I'm going to go to Usage Rights, and I'm going to say we're looking for non-commercial reuse with modification. And my size is going to be at least large. And Google, unfortunately, got rid of the ability to search by larger than a certain size unless you go to their advanced image search. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to kind of scroll through here and take a look. I'm looking for kind of a meadow setting. So something like this is pretty good, but that resolution is not good enough for me. That one's not bad, but it's awfully saturated in color. This one looks pretty good. I'm going to open this in a new tab. And let's see here. That one could be odd. No, it's not big enough. This one could work because the people are going to go away. They're going to be hidden by the building. So even that one would be okay. It's kind of a nice grassy meadow. So I could go ahead. Let's look at that one. There you go. Right click and say Save Image As, and we'll put it into today's folder. There we go. The other option was this one. This one actually has pretty high resolution. It could use some post-processing. It's a little washed out. But let me go to Download, and we'll go to Full Resolution. I'll right-click and say Save Image As, and I'll put it there as well. Sometimes it's worth it to find a couple images to see which one ends up looking better. Okay, so I'm back to Photoshop here. And unfortunately, I'm going to need more sky beyond my image. So I'm going to zoom out here, and then I'll go to Image, and then Canvas Size. This is going to give me more canvas. I'm going to peg the bottom here as my anchor point. So it's the bottom middle. And then I can increase the height, and we'll crop it down a little bit afterward. I'll go up to 50, so it's more of a square. That way I have plenty of space above my image. I can then go to File, Place Embedded, and I can bring in that background image. There it is. I'm going to need to make it a little bit larger. It stays in proportion when I'm moving it. I don't have to push down the Shift key as I do it. And once I have it large enough, I can go ahead and commit to it. There it is. But I need it to go behind my other layers. So I can go down here behind the other layers. Let me turn off for just a second everything but the lines layer. I'm going to take the lines layer and I'm going to change the opacity temporarily on it so I can kind of look through it. I'm seeing both at the same time. And then I can go back up to, or I can go down to the background image. I can use the Move tool and I can move it down. And so the important thing here is that I need to know where the horizon line is and make sure that I'm lining it up. If the meadow is going slightly uphill, you're going to see this edge of the meadow. If it's going slightly downhill, that edge would be hidden. I believe this to be going slightly uphill. Oops, sorry, wrong image. So when I move it, I'm going to make that slightly above where my meadow would be, right about like that. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and change that opacity of the lines layer back up to 100%. Like that. You could see it against the that fill of the ground if you wanted to. Let me go back up. And I'll turn everything on except for the color. There we go. And now I need to mask off so that we're actually seeing the background. And I may move this up on top of the other layers here except for the ground, because it might be a little bit easier. So I need to think about what am I seeing through. And sometimes color helps you to see this a little bit. That's why I included that. But essentially what we're doing is we're saying, okay, well, it's going to be, and I'll use the magic wand tool here, it's going to be this piece of sky. It's going to also be this upper piece that I don't have. It's going to be, I'm seeing through that little opening, and then I'm seeing through all of these windows.
You holding the shift key?
I am holding down the shift key while I'm doing that. There we go. So I've selected all of the windows that I'm looking through. I've selected the background. And now I will go to my image file right here. And I will click on the Add Layer Mask button right down here. When I click on the Add Layer Mask, it's going to cut it out for all of my building. So I'm now seeing through the building a little bit. Based on where the image is, I can actually come down and crop this back to this image. So I'll use the crop tool. I don't need all this extra space. And we'll drop this one right back down to right there. And I'll finish. So now I'm looking just at that particular image. But that's going to vary based on the image that you picked for the background. And so in my case, that's what I'm seeing. So now we have to think about how do we differentiate what's happening outside versus what's happening through all of the windows, through what we're seeing in the windows. Let me turn off the color version here for a second. There we go. And so this is where we could apply an effect for part of this. So let's use, I'm going to use the color again as my selection. I'll come in here to my magic wand and I'm going to pick just the windows. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let me go ahead and just do the adjustment layer. So I'm going to go up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer. And I can do a, let's do a hue and saturation adjustment. Perfect. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to push the hue a little bit more blue, I hope. But I don't think you're going to see it well enough there. No, you're not going to see it well enough. Okay. Oh, wait. There we go. I needed to be on the background layer. Let's see here. No, I don't like that one. This is one of those things where it always takes a little bit of experimentation to decide which one you like. Let me try a color balance. Good. Let's see if I can push that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to push that a little bit more to the blue spectrum. But I only want this to apply to the background, but also I only want it to apply where the windows are. So I'm going to press Ctrl-Alt-G to tie the color balance just to the background. But then I'm going to create a mask here with all of these windows. So let me go ahead and use my magic wand tool. Oops, sorry, I need to be on the color layer. I'll hold down Shift to select the windows. There we go. I've selected all of the windows. I'm then going to go up to Select and then Inverse. So I get everything but the windows. And then I'll go to my color balance mask right here. And I'm going to paint in black. So I'll flip my colors. I'm going to go to the paintbrush. We can paint everything like that. Color on. And the windows themselves have been tinted a slightly different color. Might be a little hard for you guys to see on the screen. The other strategy that we could do is we could actually turn the background image black and white and leave the color just in the windows, or vice versa. So all we're trying to do is differentiate. So let me show you that as an option. So I'll turn off that color balance for a second, and we'll go in and we'll do a black and white versus a non-black and white. I'll go up to my layer, New Adjustment Layer. This time it's going to be a channel mixer. Go ahead and say OK. There's my channel mixer layer. It's going to be, again, Ctrl-Alt-G, so it ties to the layer below only. We're going to check the box for monochrome, which is going to turn the background image black and white. Again, I would go through my presets and decide which of the presets gives us our best looking background. Probably that one. Looks pretty nice. but I only want it to apply to the background, not to the individual windows. So I'll go ahead and use my magic wand on the color layer to select my windows. There we go. All my windows are selected. And then on this channel mixer layer, I'm going to paint in black. Remember, I'm on the mask for this layer, and I'll paint out just the windows, and those will come back to being in full color. So it's just a way of differentiating. This is window, this is not window. It's also a way of being able to say this is open and doesn't contain glass, and all of these contain glass. So it's just different strategies for how you might show what you're seeing in this particular scene. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the color here for a second. Now at this point, I could go in and I could start to look at what about materials? Would I like to put materials in? And what's really important here is that you have to think about is it too much? Is it not enough? Should I put materials here? Should I not put materials here? I might prefer this without the materials in it. But I'll put the materials in, take a look, and then decide does it belong with the materials or not. So in this case, I would drop in some kind of a concrete texture for the building. So I would go to File and then Place, Embedded. And I would pick some kind of a concrete texture. I think I had one from elevation. Yeah, I had this one. Yeah, it's kind of ugly. Let me see if I can get a better one here. Let's pick this one right there. And then I'm going to shrink this down so that the size would be appropriate. I am in the habit of always holding down Shift, and I'm not supposed to. So this panel should be about a 4x8 panel or so. So I know that this is about 12 feet tall, so I want about 3 panels showing. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time and try to get that size just about right. There we go. So I have that placed. I'll go ahead and commit to it. I'm going to take it and copy it. So I'm on that layer. I'll Control A to copy, to select all, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. It gives me another copy of it. You could also go to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste. I'll use the Move tool to line up so that those two come together. This is a seamless tiling texture. I could do it one more time, although I don't need it. So I'll just stick with the 2. So I have those 2. I'm going to go ahead and merge those 2 together. So I'll select those 2 layers, and I'm going to go to Layer, Merge Layers, and that's going to merge those 2 into one layer. I'll turn it off for a second. I'll use my color, again, to select where do I want that texture to be. So I would want it to be here, I would want it to be here, there, right there, right there, right there, and then right along the top, and potentially down in between the windows. Though actually forming those up in concrete would be rather challenging. So let me turn off that. We'll go back up to my concrete layer. There it is. And I will go ahead and click on the Add Layer Mask, and it will cut that out for the concrete. Most of it's being shown right here, not so much over in this particular view. I'll turn off my color, which it is. I'll press Control 0, and we can now kind of see what the building's looking like as I start to add that texture. This concrete texture is not too bad because it's pretty plain from a look standpoint. I could, if I wanted to, drop the opacity down on that concrete to make it a little bit less obvious. So we could drop it down a little bit, and we wouldn't see quite as much of it. All right, so I have that done. The next thing to do would be to add some artificial lighting. There's not a lot of good places in this building to add artificial lighting because I'm against windows here, but I'll do it in the bedroom just so you can see it done. So if I'm going to do artificial lighting, I need a new layer to work on. So I'll click New Layer. I'll rename that to be Lights. There we go. It's active. I'm then going to use my brush tool, and I will pick kind of a yellowish color. I tend to go more toward the yellowy orange color, more in that vein. I'll go ahead and say OK. And then I'm going to change on this lights layer. I'm going to change my blending mode to one called soft light. So my blending mode is in soft light. I'm on the lights layer. I'm going to, with my brush tool, I'm going to use my bracket tool to make my brush smaller, I hope, which it's not working. I'm having trouble with brushes today. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to start small. So let's say that there's a can light, a recessed light in the ceiling right here. I'm going to start with my brush small, make a single click. Move down slightly, make my brush a little bit bigger, make another click. Move down, make my brush a little bit bigger. Too big. Like that. Let me back up for a second. There, I should have soft edges to it. I had a hard brush. It needs to be a soft brush. That was my mistake. So make sure your hardness is set to 0, and then we'll start again. There you go. First click, down a little bit. Second, down a little bit. Third, down a little bit. Fourth. And then you get to the very bottom. So I'm giving it a little bit of a cone shape. It's hard for you guys to see on the projector as easily as it is here. I'll do the same thing over here. So we'll start there. We'll move up. We'll move up. Move up. Like that. So I'm giving it that little bit of a cone shape. Notice, though, that my light is going outside of where this room is. So I'm spilling out over the side here. I'm spilling out over the side there. Here's a perfect opportunity to use a mask. It doesn't have to be particularly precise. I'll make a rectangle there. I'm going to go ahead on the lights layer and click on the Add Layer Mask. And it's going to apply the lights only in that room, not outside of the room. So I've added that mask. So you can see that masking is very, very important to how you create these sorts of things. So I have my artificial light there. It would be helpful to have some people for scale in this building as well. So I'm going to bring in some people. I'll go to File, Place Embedded. And let's see here. I'm going to use Silhouette because I think that tends to work really nicely. I'll go ahead and click on Place. There she is. I'm going to put her on top of everything else. Then I also do need to edit her for size. So I'm going to go to Free Transform. And I'm going to make her smaller. I can't hold down Shift. It's Habit. Now, in this particular case, you can see that she's facing the wrong direction. So it wouldn't make sense to have her standing over here in the corner facing the wall. I don't know. Maybe in your world it makes sense. In mine, it doesn't make sense to have that. So I'm going to flip her around. I would go to back up to my Edit, Transform, and then I would go to Reflect. Or excuse me. Sorry. Flip horizontal. There we go. Now she's facing the correct direction. I need to make sure that her height is appropriate. So right now she's too tall because of the size of the building. Oop, no Shift. Right? Remember, I have these kind of as a guide. If that is 4 by 8, that would be 4 feet. So I want to make sure that she's about the right height. Yeah, that looks about right. I'll go ahead and commit to it, and there she is. To me, it looks a little weird having her gray against the black, so I'm going to change her to be black as well. So we'll go ahead and go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer. This is going to be a Levels Adjustment. I'm going to press Ctrl-Alt-G to tie that levels adjustment only to the silhouette. And then I will pull right down here, not up in the histogram, but down below here. I'm going to pull the white value all the way over so that she becomes black. So I have that person there. Maybe I'd add one more person over here somewhere. I can go to File and then Place, Embedded. And we'll use the person running. Sure, why not? Nope, can't hold down Shift. Sometimes it's helpful, if you've already got one size, it's helpful to have the two people next to each other first to kind of judge appropriate size. Maybe she's a little bit taller. That's about right. Come over here. And we'll put her right there. Same thing though, I'm going to add the adjustment layer to it. So I'll go up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Levels, Control-Alt-G to tie it to just the woman here. And then we're going to do the same adjustment where I pull her to be black as well. I'll press Control-0 so we can kind of zoom out and see. You see that I now have the figures in the scene to give it a sense of scale, to have an understanding. Actually, it feels like maybe she needs to be over just a little bit more compositionally. That was not the correct layer. No, still not the correct layer. Why is it not? There we go. So just move her over a little bit so she's a little bit more of an appropriate scale. So I have those people installed. The last and final thing that may be worthwhile for you is to fade out the background image. If you want it to become transparent so that it doesn't make a sharp line on the top of a drawing, we can go through and do that as well. So this would be done on the background layer, which is right here. To do it, I need to create a fade, a gradient from black to white up in the outside part of the page. So let's make a selection first. I'll turn on color. I'll use my magic wand to select just the background. There it is. I'll turn off color. I'll make sure that I'm on the mask of this layer. And then I will use the gradient tool here to go from black to white. And all I have to do is click and draw a line. That was the wrong direction. Let me draw the line down instead of up. And there we go. I'm going to draw it a little bit bigger so you can see it more. There you go. It's fading out as we get closer to the top. The longer that I draw this line, the more the fading is going to happen. The less that I draw this line, the sharper it's going to be toward the top. So I'll keep it fairly long. If I hold down Shift, I can control that it's perfectly straight, side to side. Maybe a little bit more, maybe about like that. So it's just fading out toward the top, softening that upper edge. So at this point, I'll go ahead and use my rectangular marquee. I'll click off, and now we see the final product here. This is what our goal is today, to create the section view, a nice looking section view. When you're done, you'll save it as a JPEG. You could even use this as part of your final assignment, 106. Let's see if there's anything else. No, the one other thing I will point out, if you got a little bit lost, if you go to the tutorials 10.3, I actually have a write-up for going through the whole thing. The only difference here in the whole process was that I did include some interior shadows because of the way the light was coming through the windows on the side wall. I was able to include a little bit of that. But again, that's specific to your individual project. So there it is. You can go through that if you get a little bit lost. And again, we're trying to kind of create something along this line. Okay?
It says we should download a Photoshop bird brush. Should we do that?
No, skip the bird brush. Some people really like the bird brushes. You can download it. I'll show it to you, but you don't have to do it. If you do a Google search, you can get a Photoshop bird brush. There we go. We can download it. There it is. It's a zip file, so let me show it in my downloads folder, and let me extract it. Actually, I'll just extract it right here. There we go. That's the bird brush. So we can go back into Photoshop here. We can go to our presets. So I'll go to Edit, and then Presets, Preset Manager. We did this a while back. We're in Brushes, so I can go to Load, and I can load in that bird brush. We can open that up. There's a bunch of different bird brushes here. The idea behind a bird brush is that essentially with the paintbrush tool here, we can load let me get down here to our bird brush. There it is. All right, so we could pick, say, this grouping of birds. And then you can kind of see the preview of what it is. I want to make sure that my foreground color is black. We can make this a little bit bigger, and we can place in, oops. Let me do it on the ground layer there. No, I don't want yellow birds. I want black birds. There we go. And so you can place some birds in. Sometimes that is kind of like people. It gives a sense of texture. It just gives you a little bit, don't like, do tons of birds everywhere. Like, we don't need it to be super creepy. You can get overkill with how many birds you put in the scene. It's a few birds here, a few birds there, but it's kind of like people. It's a little bit of entourage. So you can look around. They have some different groupings, and so you could add a couple groupings maybe. Even that might be a little much. Like one little flock there, that works. Okay? So it is something that's there. I wrote it up on the sheet because I wanted to show you and remind you how to load in brushes so you could do something like that. Thanks for actually reading the sheet and reminding me so I didn't forget to show it to you. I think I covered everything else on the sheet at least. All right? Okay, so I'll let you guys start to work, and good luck.